All right, so let's get rocking and rolling. I do have some stuff that I thought I would share, which might help, and hopefully this will work. Sometimes PDFs don't like this. Can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Perfect. That's exciting. Okay, something worked. This is a great start. Okay, so the reality is that as BIAs, we are required under the community charter to go back to our membership every 5 years and seek a mandate for renewal. This is actually in legislation. It's called the BC Community Charter. This particular renewal for the KCBIA is quite interesting for us because we've tethered together our renewal with a review of the boundaries of the KCBIA. We did that for a couple of reasons. The first reason we did it was that we wanted to look at where the gaps were in the representation continuum for the three key business areas in Kamloops for us. So that would be North Shore, Valley View, which is called East Kamloops BIA, and the downtown. What we understood very quickly, what we all know really, is that the 100 block of West Victoria Street and the sort of eastern gateway from about 10th over to the interchange at Columbia are gray zones. There's not a lot of representation out there. In fact, they're not even included in the current boundaries. What's fascinating is in 2002, when the KCBIA was actually put in place, the boundaries actually included those two areas. So there was some politicking of the day, and those two areas got excluded from the KCBIA. So we're looking at these two processes to make sure that we have a contiguous level of engagement across all three key business areas in Kamloops. This renewal and expansion process is not a done deal. It's not a fait accompli. In Vancouver, once a BIA is enacted, BIs never have to go back for a renewal. They do it through the municipality only. They don't do it through membership. Outside of the Lower Mainland, where the Vancouver Charter exists, in Vancouver, the Vancouver Charter exists. Outside, the BC Charter exists. I actually like going back every 5 years. I like to ensure that we're doing the effective work. I like to make sure we're proving return on investment. And I like to have these renewal conversations where we start talking about, what are we doing well? Where are opportunities for, improvements? And are there things that we're missing that we need to do for small and medium-sized business in British Columbia? So this particular process we're in right now is not the decision process. This is the communication and engagement part of the process. The decision process is actually a legislated function, and it comes out of the city of Kamloops. So on or about July 17th, the city of Kamloops will issue, and I hate to say this, renewal documents that follow the AAP process. And I hate to say this because the AAP process has been significantly overused by our municipality. Having said that, that is the legislative process under the community charter, and that's what we have to use. So they will send letters out to all existing BIA members in the downtown core and all expansion potential members outside of the current boundaries. That process will run for about 30 days, at which time the city will collect the responses. And if the responses eclipse 50% of the registered property owners and or the cumulative property value, then the renewal expansion fails. If it does not eclipse that 50%, then it is successful. So that's how the process really runs right now. This is just about information and understanding what goes on. So I want to talk a little bit about some of our core services. And probably the big one that we're all most aware of is our marketing services. The marketing services really are about getting out and making sure that we are sharing the message that you need shared on behalf of your business. One of the challenges we run into with marketing is, and I say this quite frequently, we can lead the horse to water, but we can't make it drink. So the reality is we can market the bejesus out of your business, but you also have to take some actions to create sort of this, crossing the threshold. That happens in events. It happens in all of the things we do. We bring feet to the pathway outside your business. Bringing them into your business is where you come into the play. So when we start talking about things like return on investment, it's really difficult to say, because for most associations, if any of you belong to associations, you know the value you get out of it is incrementally greater when you're involved in it, when you're actually taking active and proactive steps to really take advantage of the services that are available. So we provide the service, we provide the suite of services. It's up to the individual property and or business owners to then take advantage of those services to maximize their value. We can only go so far. We can't force people into businesses. As much as we'd love to be able to say, hey, we can just do that and get everybody in, we actually can't do that. So the second piece that we offer, of course, are events. And so events are an ever-evolving process. The Lapu-Lapu situation in the Lower Mainland really changed the events paradigm for most BIs across the province of BC. And most of it is around safety concerns. Because, for example, last year, the Santa Claus Day Parade, the Santa Claus Parade, the security and street closure portion of that was almost $32,000. So when you have small community events, it's extremely challenging to meet the new tests of security while also creating vibrancy in the community. There's a bit of a yin and yang there. So what we look at in the event side for KCBIA is we're always evolving that paradigm. Is this getting traction? Is this drawing people in the downtown core? Is this creating the outcomes that we want? If not, then let's look at that critically and determine whether we really want to proceed with that or whether we want to replace it with something new. What I can tell you is that the events paradigm for KCBIA are changing. And Alex and I, in the next couple of weeks, will actually be sitting down and looking at 2027 events already. Believe it or not, a year out is almost too late to start planning on some of these things. It takes a long time to pull some of these major events together. Hot Night, Rib Fest, summer night markets. These are events that take 6, 9, 12 months to plan. They're actually significant. They require multiple levels of government review. Interior Health often has to be involved when you have food trucks or other food purveyors. There's a lot of complexity in them. So our goal with events is really to get feet on the ground inside the BIA's boundaries, to really get people to the doorstep. Again, how you capitalize on that is a whole nother question. We have one business downtown that we actually canceled Spring Fling this year because we weren't seeing traction on the ground. And then one of the business owners in that same block came to us and said, "Oh, whoa, wait a minute, don't cancel that. That's actually one of my better weekends." So we went and met with her. And we talked about what she does to capitalize on the event, because the event is just an attraction piece. And she actually went through a whole list of things. She curates her community. She has direct email. She provides incentives, et cetera, et cetera. So she actually drew significantly higher business from that event than anybody around her. But it was her approach to that event which allowed her to capitalize. So these are the kind of conversations we really need to have in the membership. It's not just about us, creating an event and saying, "Ooh, this is great." It's how do you then take that event and make it work for your business? And so these are things I think the new ED will actually dig into more so as we move forward. I'll be still around to help mentor that new ED a certain amount, but the goal is to try and get somebody who's really sort of thinking about, what's that next level of engagement on our event side. The third thing that we've talked about a lot is the CAP team. And some of our Q&As are quite interesting. They talk a lot about, why does the CAP team do outreach? Why is the CAP team involved in this? Or why is the CAP team involved in that? And so the way to best contextualize that, I think, is to go back to a concept that we see in a lot of municipalities right now. So municipalities quite often undertake what we call outreach. So basically what happens is the province of BC doesn't necessarily put a robust street entrenchment program together, right? It's difficult to get people connected from street into low barrier shelters or housing or, health paradigms. So what happens is the municipality says, well, look, our taxpayers really want this service. They really want us to engage on the street level. We're going to provide outreach and CSO. We're going to provide some other services. We're going to provide tables to help negotiate. And so what happens is the municipality upreaches into a provincial responsibility and pulls it down. The challenge is that now becomes the domain of the taxpayer and the municipality, when in fact it should still be a provincial responsibility. In many ways, over the last 3 or 4 years, CAP has fallen victim to the same type of process, where we have been pulled into more of the street entrenchment and away from our active member communication and event supports. So what we're looking at right now, and part of our survey digs into this a little bit, and Elise can share the link whenever she's ready, but part of the survey digs into this is, what do we actually want CAP team to do? Let's make sure it is an effective communication tool. For us right now, what we're seeing trending wise is we're looking at business communication. We're looking at supporting events, whether they're KCBIA or community. We're looking at really creating going back to more of the ambassadorial role, right? Really working with our business members and our visitors to try and create a better environment. So one of the things we want to do is make sure that that's where you want us to go, because if it is, we'll retool this whole team to ensure that that's where we're going. And that again will provide additional value for you, because you'll have a direct conduit into things such as reporting, crime prevention follow-up, and other things where there may be impacts to your business, which we can help you to manage. So that's the third area. Hold on, my mouse just went down there. There it is. Okay. So as I noted earlier, and I'm just going to skip this slide fairly quickly, the image on the left is the current KCBIA boundary, and the image on the right is the original proposed boundaries, which we're going back to. What we realize is that the North Kamloops BIA, which is my typical BIA where I'm permanently stationed, and the East Kamloops BIA and the downtown BIA all actually collaborate quite robustly. But what's going on with that area between 10th and the interchange? What's going on the area of West Victoria? West Victoria businesses came to the North Shore BIA a number of years ago and said that the KCBIA doesn't want us, we need help. So how can we help the West Victoria businesses? Can we look at targeted community safety planning? Can we look at advocating for more resources? Can we look at talking to the province about the mix of low barrier and social housing? And those are all things we can do in that area that gives those business owners a bigger voice. They're part of a bigger continuum now. And quite interestingly, those same conversations are ones that I'm bringing forward as president of BIABC. So we actually represent 60 BIAs and approximately 72,000 businesses across the province. So suddenly the 100 block of West Vic become part of a much bigger advocacy group. There's tremendous value for them in that. On the east side, we're looking at these Build Kamloops projects, such as the curling center, the multi-purpose racket sports. There's discussion about a conference center in that area. And we're saying, hey, how do we make sure that you have beautification, infrastructure support, lighting, business branding, marketing, events? How do we make sure you can take advantage of those facilities being in your area and maximize the exposure for your businesses? So that's where we go on the east side, because there's this tremendous marketing potential that currently is not there as a cohort. It is instead there as an individual one-off. So these are the challenges we face in those two areas. And what we want to say is, we need to represent everybody. When we're advocating at municipal level, every business in Kamloops that's within a BI boundary should be represented. Every business needs to have that cumulative voice, because what happens is you email into City Hall or maybe City Council, and you're one voice with one issue. But when the EDs from the three BIAs go in, we're 3,000 voices, right? And we're all together and we're all advocating together, and it is significant. Go ahead, Elise. Yeah, I see your hand up.
Are you able to provide an example, Jeremy, of where there was like an individual business or property owner that was advocating to City Hall, but then in working with the BIA, they found greater success, just as an example for the group?
So I'll use a safety example, because we're actually experiencing it over here on the Tronquil Road in the 100 and 200 blocks. We have the Pathways shelter immediately across the street from our office. The shelter itself, we have no comment on. I mean, we're not experts in social paradigms, and we're certainly not experts in housing and mental health. But the residual impacts from that as an attraction point have been significant for our business community. And so every once in a while, you'll have a business owner who will pop up with they may get a media interview, or they'll write a letter to council or something like that. And in some cases, because they're so passionate, they can be perceived as just angry people trying to vent their frustration. But with the BIA, we come together and we say, well, look, there's actually merit to this, and we can actually collect the data and prove it to you. There is opportunity here. And so what we've done in the 100 and 200 block is we've created a micro safety plan. We've actually, oh, Yvonne has just emailed. She's been trying to sign in since before 8 o'clock. We will call her and deal with that. So one of the challenges is we saw the opportunity to be more what's the word I'm here proactive. And so the businesses in the area, ourselves, the shelter operator, BC Housing, RCMP, CSO in the city have all come together to run this micro safety committee to try and assess how we can understand what's going on and then react to it more effectively. But otherwise, you could just be one person with an angry message, right? So the goal is to sort of pull people in and say, let's work together on this and collaborate more fulsomely. And then suddenly, for us, it's 46 businesses at the table who are all expressing the same issue, but in a way that actually can move the needle on the issue itself. So that's an example of how we work collaboratively. We also talk about things like infrastructure development. We I don't know if any of you noticed, there's a heck of a lot of traffic closures in the downtown core this year, like street closures. That's a problematic issue. And we've actually been talking to the city on behalf of all of our members about a more proactive scheduling process. How do we look at, some of these temporary closures being on Sundays or after hours versus during the height of the business day? How do we look at, what the schedule is like for the replacement of major infrastructure? Should it happen in June and July, or, July and August, which are our peak sales seasons, or should it happen in September and October? Or March and April, right? So these are all the kind of conversations we can have with the city that as an individual, you may not get the same traction, but as a collective, you get significant impact from it. Did that answer the question for you, Elise? Perfect. Okay, good. The other question we have is clean team. So we get a lot of conversation about what does a clean team do? And there's been some posts actually just in the last couple of days where people have been expressing concern that they've phoned CSOs or RCMP and nobody's responded, and I've got some defecation on my doorstep, or I've got cardboard boxes on my back that have been lit on fire, or all those kind of things happen. The clean team goes in and does that work. We don't do wet work, we do dry work. So it's important when you start talking about defecation. Wet work requires sterilization, special equipment, and special training, and those kind of things require a special contractor. But if we're just picking up a piece of dried up human excrement, we will do that work, right? We will also clean up needles, we'll clean up foils, we pick up cardboard, we collect trash. And so this slide really speaks to that. In the downtown last year, we picked up 1,582 bags of trash. So that's about 15,000 pounds, 10 pounds per bag. We picked up over 7,500 harm items. So needles, foils, sterile water things, naloxone, all that kind of stuff. In the feces, we picked up 240 piles of dry fecal matter around the downtown core. Cardboard, the equivalent of about 1,900 cardboard boxes, 39 shopping carts, and for small business, like even medium-sized businesses like a shopping center, a cart is worth between $800 and $1,000. So that's a big loss if you're not collecting them and returning them. We had approximately 114 CSO calls. And in the downtown core alone, we removed 647 graffiti tags. Now, the interesting thing about graffiti is probably 5 years ago, the tags were, 24-inch, 36-inch maybe. Tags nowadays are 5 foot by 8 foot. They're being tagged on top of murals, which you'll see some press on tomorrow, I understand, because there was a lot in the downtown alleys last weekend. But the challenge with tagging a mural is you have to try and save a $15,000 or a $20,000 mural. So you have to be careful. What chemicals are we using? How are we applying treatment? But then the other cases, where you don't have a mural, you're literally repainting entire walls. Like, it's crazy the amount of work we have to do. So this 647, while it's a number, doesn't actually reflect the true scale of the size of the problem that we deal with on a regular basis. So these are all the types of services that we offer in the downtown core to our members, because we think that the value of those services is significant. So one of the questions we did have, which I found quite interesting, and I'm just going to pull that question up here. It's on the website. Actually, I'll even share the website because I've got it open as well. I think it's this one. Should be that one. Can you guys see that? Important information for members. So this was the first question here I found quite interesting, because they're like, well, what about stuff like the Red Bridge? So the Red Bridge is actually a provincial administrative transportation structure. It's not a Kamloops municipal structure. So having said that, it's sort of this no man's land between the BIA and the Kamloops, right? There's sort of this weird sort of gray space. So what we do is when a situation like this comes up, we say, what are the impacts peripherally from the structure not being there? Like, has it led to a decrease in robustness in sort of that eastern gateway area? Has it impacted, traffic to and from Kamloops and or the downtown core? Does it have long-term negative consequence? And if we can say yes to any of those questions, then we have a role in advocating for that particular item. So in this case, we do strongly support the rebuild of the Red Bridge. We've talked to the municipality about it. I was at the provincial budget discussions the other day and talked to both Ward Stamer and Peter Millibar about it. And in fact, the city was also there advocating for a rebuild of the Red Bridge. So yes, we do get involved in these larger projects. The challenge is they typically must either be within the boundary, or they must have a ripple effect within our area. Otherwise, we don't technically have a mandate. But again, when we start looking at community vibrancy and building the bigger picture, we do have a role there. There's an interesting question here about heritage preservation, and this is a really tricky question, because the reality is the BIA actually has zero mandate to operate in our residential zones. So a lot of our historic properties in Kamloops are residential properties. There are, however, some historic commercial properties as well. So within the commercial property, we would engage with the heritage preservation group, but realistically, most of those properties are owned by private individuals. So we would have to facilitate conversation between those groups if there were issues related to them. We don't have a direct legal mandate in regards to heritage conservation, but we do have a role to assist in the facilitation of conversation. So that was an interesting question. I actually have not seen that question come up before. So it was the first time I'd ever seen that question. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. Financial and operational policy. Are there different levy rates for nonprofits within the expansion area? So this is a yes/no question. If it is a nonprofit operating within a commercial standard class 5/6 property, then it is subject to property tax like any other commercial class 5/6 property. However, if it is a church or a provincial building or something that is taxation exempt, it does not pay into the levy process. An example of that is BCLC or Stewart Wood, right? They are examples of where they're tax exempt structures. Interestingly enough, BCLC voluntarily contributes into the KCBIA rather than remaining tax exempt. So it's really good news for us. So yes and no. The other one that was it's come up a lot of times, and this is probably the biggest challenge that we have, is it's like, what's the return on investment? I need to know. And I'm like, that's a really, really complex question. So if you have $1 million property, based on our levy request, you're going to pay $840 a year in levy fees as the property owner. So as the property owner, you pay $840. I've just had, there's Yvonne. Hey, yay. Good morning, Yvonne. We're just going to continue on and we'll come back, circle around for specific questions in a sec, but thanks for joining in. So the ROI is really difficult to measure in some cases. So say you have $1 million property, and I'm just using that because it's a round number. You pay $840 as the property owner. Now, this is the really important differentiation. The levy is actually paid by the owner of the property. Normally, the lessees within that property are, paying some of the levy through the CAM costs at the end of the year, through your final year-end negotiation through your lease. But what happens is If you have $1 million property and you have 3 businesses, then each pays a third of that 840 if the property owner rolls it through. If you're only one property owner and one business, then you pay the 840. So you see the challenge with making an ROI conversation, because you may pay a different amount depending on which building you're in, depending on the value of the building, depending on how many tenants are in the building. So I usually go back to the $840 because I think it's a reasonable discussion point. So assume you put $840 a year into a BIA process and you start talking about value for your dollar. Well, we talk about advocacy. So if you can't undertake that yourself, you're going to hire somebody like Elise or other consultants at potentially thousands of dollars every single month, right? Potentially to do your advocacy work on your behalf. But as a member of the BIA, we pick that up for you. So there's potentially thousands of dollars in savings right there. Right now, we're looking at things like property valuations, barriers to economic development, like community beautification, community safety. Like there's so many things that we do on behalf of members. I'm not saying we communicate them effectively. That's a whole nother conversation we're having right now, but we are doing that work on your behalf. Then we look at CAP services. So CAP are patrolling currently in the 3 key BIA boundaries. That service doesn't have a denomination value. I mean, if you call CSOs or RCMP, they're not charging you for their service. But realistically, as a cumulative group, we are paying into that service because we see the value of them being out there, helping people, liaising with social agencies, working with RCMP, talking to business owners about crime prevention strategies, all those kinds of things. And that has no defined dollar value. So measuring the return on investment is difficult because you have to take advantage of that service. Clean Team is out there. As I've said before, we do a lot of work all the time. That value is difficult to place as well, right? I mean, what does that service work? If you were to hire a commercial painter to paint the entire back of your building, that could be $2,000. We do it for free, right? So I'll give you an example. Last year, Ladies Only Fitness down in the Eastern Corridor, unrepresented. We got a referral file from CSOs, and they said this building has been heavily tagged along the back wall. It's not within our boundaries. We don't have a mandate there. So what do? We went and did it anyway, because that's just who we are. We believe in community beautification and contribution. But that wall, if she'd have hired somebody, would have been about $1,800 to paint. We did it for free, right? So the ROI, my point is the ROI is difficult to measure because we don't know day to day what services you're going to buy into, what you're going to work with, how you're going to draw from us. So like I said earlier, the challenge with association membership is the value is driven by how you engage more than what we offer. And so that's the real challenge of proving value and ROI in a BIA boundary. I'm just going to look through here. Okay, this was an interesting one. Will before and after data be provided to show the impact of BIA services as a result of its commitments to safety and cleanliness? Yes. We actually do this currently. This is already provided to BIA members. So the CAP team actually reports their stats. The clean team report our stats. What we don't report, because we have no legal mandate in the area, is on the social paradigm. So if you come across somebody sitting in a doorway and we call in outreach services, we actually have no legal access to the information about what happens with that individual. There's a Privacy Act contingent that does not allow us to go there. Having said that, we are working with the city on simplified reporting structures that would at least give us an indication of how many people we're moving into or out of sheltering. So a high-level piece of information, but we have to work through the Privacy Act contingencies at the provincial level because the municipality has a very high level of legal bar to meet in relation to information management. And us as a non-certified, if you would, entity in the same way, have to work with the city to determine what information can or cannot be shared. So it's a little bit of a challenge. Again, this is one of those challenging areas where we can work with the municipalities or the province or whoever to try and get into this information, but we may or may not be able to fully share that information or even collect that information based on legal requirements. So that's my sort of overviewy kind of assessment of what's going on. Are there some specific questions? Because I'm not seeing too much in the chat window. Are there some specific questions I can answer? Some burning, like what about, and I've heard, I see online this, or, like there's a lot of online speculation. Is there anything specific anybody has questions for? I do not see any questions whatsoever. Elise is our communications consultant. Elise and Kim are our communication consultants. Elise and Kim, anything I've missed that you think we should share?
Um, I think from our perspective, well, I shared the survey in the chat. I think from our perspective, it's a really tough thing, the engagement piece, like reaching out to people and getting them to participate. We've like the open houses that have been hosted or the information sessions, there were 4 booked. We did 3. One was canceled and then moved to online just to try to get some additional support and attendance, which is great. And the feedback that has been coming in has been very thoughtful. It's very, very good. It's not necessarily a numbers game. But the CAP team, for example, have gone to every single business in the downtown core in the current boundary, and then, excuse me, have also gone into some of the the proposed expansion areas as well, and have dropped off information with a link to the survey, with a link to some of the informational open house details. So I don't know if there is something that you as a group can help advise us on of, are we missing something?
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of media. We update the frequently asked questions on the KCBIA's website. We have attended socials or the mixers that have been hosted by the BAA. We are going to be doing some business walkarounds specifically to the expansion areas as well, inviting them to an online information session like this, which will be more expansion focused because there will likely be very different questions. But yeah, I guess I'm always wanting to learn, are there things that we should be looking at in order to get that additional engagement? And then I guess, is it a matter of, are people just happy and they don't feel like they have anything to bring forward? And if that's maybe the other part of it. So I don't know, like from Adam, Joel, or Chris, from your perspectives, is there something that we've missed? Is there a group that we should be chatting with? Yeah, your insight would be great. I mean, you own and run businesses in the downtown core, so that information is super insightful for us.
I'm not sure that I have anything to add at this point. I'm feel like I'm almost always trying to get up to speed on what the BIAs can help with, and it's always enlightening what's going on. And I'm just trying to gather up information on what's going on with the proposed expansion and that sort of thing. And as far as I'm concerned, things are pretty smooth flowing with the BIAs.
Awesome. Adam, do you have just not to put you and then I guess I will put you and Chris and Joel on the spot. Do you have connections to other business owners like in and around you that you would be comfortable sharing at least the survey with if I were to email you directly?
Potentially one other. Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and thumbs up from Joel and Chris. That's great. Oh, Yvonne, I keep trying to get her into the lobby for Yvonne. I will do that just because sometimes having that person and that connection just to send that survey to, it takes roughly about 10 minutes for people to fill out. But as you can see, this is where some of these questions have been coming in that have been different from, like, there's a lot of things that Jeremy and the team have received that are like, yeah, we get that question all the time, but there are some real nuggets in there as well. So yeah, I guess Chris or Joel, anything else from your perspective? I'll send you the survey link, or I'll follow up with you via email, but is there anything else that we could or be looking at to make sure that we get that engagement with property and business owners?
I think I might be a bit of a unique one here because I am, I suppose, a business owner, but a sole proprietor. And I don't actually lease. I just represent the brokerage with the KCBIA. And so I guess my question is, I mean, obviously your main target audience is going to be the property and business owners, but I'm curious if maybe some engagement with like their staff and employees and just having that conversation or having those conversations at those levels might be valuable in, helping influence, I suppose, the property and business owners, and I suppose inform them as well. As a property or business owner tend to be pretty busy, but often rely on their employees to get advice or to bounce thoughts off of when it comes to things like this. And so I'm curious if that's been like something you've been targeting or.
Yeah. So generally, Joel, our marketing events teams and our CAP team tend to engage with staff on an almost daily basis, right? So we are very present in businesses. It's one of the things that differentiates BIAs from other associations is we are literally boots on the doorstep every single day. So I would suggest from a accessing service perspective, staff probably have a higher level of engagement. But when we start to move up the engagement ladder, the property or the business owner really is about vibrancy. They're looking at dollars in the bank, reducing costs, creating more vibrancy for their business. The property owner, on the other hand, is looking for happy tenants. They're looking for property valuation increases, community vibrancy. So they're looking at each of the three groups look at a slightly different element of the BIA. So at the staff level, it's really about the day-to-day, walking in and out of the business, making a phone call because somebody's on the front stoop, or, we got something going on here, or I want to take advantage of some marketing. Can you put some stuff up for me, Alex, for example? The business owner is looking at costs of doing business. Our big push right now with the provincial government is PST expansion. Right. As a BIA over here on the North Shore, I've already estimated that's going to cost me $5,000 a year. I would love to know what it's costing small business, right? You're starting to look at security and accounting and all these other things that are now PST subjective. And they've also been removing some categories of PST exemption, right? So those are the kind of things that the business owner looks at. The property owner looks at taxation from a municipal or provincial lens. They look at broad economic policy and how it creates more economic depth for the municipality. And they look at how do we make sure that our tenants remain happy, remain in our properties, and continue to pay our leases so that we can continue to run our businesses, right? So each one actually has this really interesting, sort of slightly different, but all interconnected lens on what a BIA does. And that's the challenge, is staff don't care about, big picture leaseholds. Businesses sort of care about both, staff and, right? And so it's where you put your vast majority of your communication effort. And in a process like this, we have to get to the property owners who make the vote and the business owners who encourage the property owners to make the vote, right?
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Yvonne, you joined us. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
On our end, I think the biggest challenge is always going to be what is the demographic makeup around the downtown core as an arts venue. The data points to the fact that with it, attendance at venues decreases by 80% when you reach a mile out. So as we see increased densification downtown and we're starting to see demographic shifts, that is a key aspect for us, which I believe is also going to be important for other types of businesses, because obviously that increases foot traffic and looking at what's going to happen, especially as people continue to move into city gardens. Are we looking at that type of data collection at this point, or at least understanding there, or are we that's basically what you can pull from that. My ramble there.
So this is a data dashboard that actually me on the North Shore was the first one in BC to subscribe to it. Downtown and East Kamloops have also come on this dashboard in the last couple of months. So this is a back-end data dashboard that we collect this information from Environics, from the Canadian Urban Institute, from StatsCan. Some of this is duplication of information that Venture Kamloops has, and some of it is very unique to each BIA boundary. So when we start looking at downtown Kamloops as a whole, we look at this specific geographic footprint, which we will change if once the expansion is successful. But basically, this broader, bigger picture tells us that we are drawing approximately 1 million visitors per 30 days into the downtown core. 1 million vehicle traffics into and out of the downtown core in April of 2026. We know this data is true. So then my question is always, if we have 1 million people coming out, what's stopping them from coming to your business? Lack of awareness, lack of opportunity, lack of connection to you. Like, there's got to be a reason they're not coming in, because they're coming to the downtown core. They're just not coming into your particular venue. So that's the first question we ask, right? Like, what are you doing to capture? Second question we ask is, what does your weekday look like? So for this particular area, Friday's the busiest day. And quite interestingly, Friday afternoon kind of makes sense. There's a lot of restaurants downtown, right? It's sort of the key thing. So Friday afternoon tends to be the big time. But we can also dig into this and look at weekly data. So we can do this yearly. We can take this in quarterly. Interestingly enough, all BIAs around Canada saw this blip in 2025, this big rise in 25, which is really unusual. But we're all settling back into our more historic levels that were sort of pandemic era levels. So what we're seeing is we still have significant traffic. We still see significant visits by the day. And the way this works out is annualized, right? So this is annual 25, this is annual 26. We can look at our predominant day parts in here. So this is valuable to have. And this is the work that we're just getting into on the data side. We're pulling more of this data up. Then we look at visitor demographics. This is fascinating. The visitor heat map is where are most of our shoppers and transits in and out of the downtown core coming from. So downtown actually has a fairly broadly dispersed market range within Kamloops. The North Shore BIA, we have a hotspot right here, and 80% of our business comes from within 1 kilometer. It's phenomenal. It is the most concentrated retail bubble in Canada. It's fascinating stuff. So you look here and you actually have a fairly significant draw across the city. But we also look at the next table down. This is kind of a little more geeky, but I kind of like this. So the next table down, it's like, so let's see, 8.5% of our visitors are right in the downtown core. So as community gardens and some of the other densification comes on, we expect to see this move up a little bit higher because there's more people literally there who are going to walk down and take advantage of stuff with it. So this is all the kind of stuff that we have. We have profiles here. And what we're just about to buy into, and I'll stop sharing here because I can data you to death. I really can. One of the interesting things we're doing right now is the North Shore and the downtown BIA at this point are buying what's called MasterCard data. So it is net 30 spend data from MasterCard. It covers all of the core purchasing lines, whether it's Interac, MasterCard, Visa, doesn't matter. The data all rolls up into the MasterCard Corporation. And so what we would be able to do with that is we'd be able to say, hey, it's hot night, right? So let's look back at the last 30 days at the spend data. Did that hot night actually create a ripple of purchase within the downtown community? Hey, it's a Santa Claus parade. Was there a ripple of sales within the Santa Claus parade? So this is a data set that both of these BIAs have just moved into. We actually subscribed to this in January. The data was provided to us starting in March. It's some historic data in here, but as we continue forward, yes, the question I saw in the chat was, is this going to be shared? Yes, and I think it's to a point. So the challenge is we receive a license for this kind of data. That doesn't mean we can't share data anecdotally. It doesn't mean, in fact, we can share some charts and stuff like that. The challenge you run into in a data set is you have to know how to interpret the data set, because sometimes it's very challenging. If you share, just blow out a whole bunch of data, people are like all over the place. What does that mean? What does that mean? So you have to take this data set in sort of a bigger lens and distill down what each thing actually means and represents. So there's two ways we do that. Number one is this data will start to being fed into both of our marketing committees on both sides of the river. But number two is Canadian Urban Institute actually do an assessment of each month's data. And each quarter, they send us an opportunities report, if you would. So we look at the data, we discuss what it means. When we look at it historically, what does it show us? And what are some opportunities to use this data to help drive some ideas forward? And that report is unique for every BIA that's subscribed to the system. So yes, there's lots of data coming. It is great data. Boards are sort of just getting into this fold. I'm a data geek. I'm already well down the pathway. I love data. But again, data is just one piece of the puzzle. And this is what's really important. We talk about this in social paradigms all the time, is data reinforces the message, the story, right? So if we say we do an annualized survey every year on impacts from crime and social disruption. It is a very intense data set. In fact, TRU's master's program uses it in some of the criminology stuff. But the data set alone, you'd think the world was melting down and being destroyed. But when you take that data in regards to where is this situation occurring, what are the actions that we're taking, you paint a different picture, right? It informs the actions you take. It does not decide what you're doing, right? So this is the challenge with data, good data is meant to inform your decision-making process, not overtake it. Right. So it's just this balance of how we use the data and how we interpret it. And these processes at both of our BIs, North Shore and downtown, we're just developing them now because we're just getting enough robust data to understand, okay, so what does this mean and how do we color it? So this is a piece of where we're moving. We haven't put this into the value proposition yet because we're just in the process of implementing. We don't really know what that value is going to be yet. A great question. Because I'm like, I got that data. I know. I know that exactly. That's super cool. Yvonne, you came in a little bit late. Is there a burning question that you'd like me to answer for you?
Thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, so much trouble coming on. I apologize.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
It was at my end for sure. And then I kicked myself off somehow. No burning question. Glad to catch a little bit of it. The data, that's fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll reach into you by phone after we're done this, Yvonne, just to make sure we're connected fully. You're in the expansion zone? No, you're in the main zone. Okay, I can't remember because there's a couple of bike corporations and I'm just not sure which one you were. I was like, which one is that again?
Oh, I'm the art studio.
Oh, sorry, you're on the art studio side. Sorry, there was a whole bunch of these registrations that came in. I'm like, which one's which?
Which is
okay, no, absolutely, Yvonne. We'll definitely touch base. There's definitely some areas where we can provide value for you for sure. So once I'm done here, I'll give you a quick call.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries at all. All right, any other questions? Any other thoughts? So everybody's 100% in. Woohoo! I'll make a leap of assumption.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to summarize just to say that very much appreciate everyone joining this call today. And I will send you an individual email as follow-up. I know, Chris, you were at that one mixer at the Big Little Science Center, as was Joel. So I know you've already taken the survey, but I will individually reach out to all of you and send you that link to the survey. And if there is anything else that you want to share, this is why the Downtown BIA has hired our team as a third-party consultant group to be able to do this work, so that if you do have anything that you would like to share with us in confidence, you can definitely do that. And that just goes into the summary of information. So it won't be specifically pointing you out or anything if there's something that you want to share kind of behind the scenes. So I will individually email all of you. And if you have any questions, happy to answer that. And again, if you're able to share that survey on with other business owners and property owners in and around you that you know, that's great. the more information and insight and feedback we can get, the better, just so that it can be, this can be a customized process to you and really help you as business owners and property owners conduct business in a great environment.